Hey YouTube, back again for a deck profile update video this time, and today I'll be doing an update video of my vampire deck. I was able to get some more cards that I've been wanting to use for this deck, and also from my last video, I felt like it was more of a casual based deck more than a competitive build, so this time I'm representing you the vampires in a more competitive level, and I actually do like the results the way it is now, so hopefully you guys will enjoy this video a lot more than the last one, so let's get right to it. Okay, so starting off like last time, we have 3 vampire Scarlet Scourge. Literally one of the best vampires of this archetype, because when he's normal or special summon, you could pay 1,000 life points, target 1 vampire monster in your graveyard except itself, and special summon it, but it cannot attack on that turn. And at the end of the battle phase, if this card destroyed any monsters, you get to special summon any of them back from the grave to your side of the field. So it's really good. And the fact that he gives you an additional summon as long as you have something in the graveyard to target with. And I really like the way he looks. He looks exactly like Alucard from Castlevania. So yeah, definitely play him at 3. You're really gonna need him quite a lot. He's gonna do a lot for you. All right, moving on. We got 3 vampire Frones. A really great card as well. Just know you can't this card has a hard once per turn effect when you special summon it. So which I'll get to right now. So whenever a monster declares an attack, it doesn't matter whose side it is, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense mode, but you can only do that once per turn. So that meaning you can't summon 2 at the same time if you happen to open up with 2. So you have to only just do 1 for now, and then you'll have to wait till next round to summon another. But now this card has an effect that's once per battle, not once per turn, and it's quick effect as well. So whenever one of your zombie monsters engages in battle, you can pay any number of life points starting from 100 to 3,000 max, and you get to bump up that monster by that many number of points that you pay with your life points. So it's really good, and like Scourge, it has the same end battle phase effect where it destroys any monsters, and you get to summon them back to your side of the field. Now, Vampires, in my opinion, is still a going first deck. It's not really meant to go second, but I had to rebuild the deck entirely to where I can go second. So, but anyway, when going first, I definitely recommend playing this guy at 2, Shadow Vampire. Because when this card is normal summon, you can special summon 1 Dark Vampire from your hand or your deck, except itself. But it can't attack for the duration of turn. But of course, or only that monster can attack for the duration of turn. But that doesn't really matter if you're going first, because you're not really going to be attacking on your first turn, of course. But still, to get an additional summon and the fact that you can get more vampire monsters out faster this way, I thought this was really good to play just 2. And it can only be used for an Exceeds material towards a dark monster, so just bear that in mind. Moving on, we have these guys, which both kind of do the same thing, but they just have a few key differences. Vampire Retainer, which is level 2, and then Vampire Familiar, which is level 1. Now, Retainer, when he's special summoned, you can pay 500 life points to add 1 Vampire spell or trap from your deck to your hand. And Familiar does the same thing. You have to pay 500 life points to add 1 Vampire monster from your deck to your hand. So, one adds a spell or trap, the other adds a monster. And they both have the same graveyard effect, which results them being banished once they leave the field, but you can pitch any vampire card from the field or your hand to the graveyard and special summon them back from the grave. And of course, these are hard once per turns as well, so don't make the mistake of thinking that you can just stack their effects. You really can't. But yeah, they're really good, and they really help add some synergy to the vampire as a whole, so I definitely recommend them at 2 and 2. Alright, for the single vampires, we have 1 Crimson, which protects your monsters. It doesn't specify on just zombies, so of course you can protect any monsters. But you have to pay 1,000 life points for each monster that would be destroyed by battle or card effect, and has the same end battle phases effect as Froone and Scourge. Next up, we got Vampire Red Baron, only because we need as much level 6s as we can, and also same end phase effect if it destroys a monster by battle or card effect. But I don't like to use its first effect because all it is just creature swap. But you pay 1,000 life points, target 1 monster your opponent controls and 1 vampire you control, and just switch the controls. I really don't see the point of that, but maybe if you have a weaker vampire, then that would have been fine. Or if this guy was able to do piercing damage, you could just switch one of your 0 defense vampire monsters to the other side. That would have been better, but yeah, and generally it's just not that great. But again, he is a pretty good 24k beater though, at least. That does make up for that. We got 1 Vampire Duke. It's always a good one of, because when this guy is normal summon, you can special summon 1 Dark Vampire in your graveyard and special summon it back to your side of the field and face up defense. And if he's special summon, you can declare a card type, monster, spell, or trap, and your opponent has to pitch one card from his deck of that type that you declared. So it's really good. And then, of course, we got one sorcerer. I don't want to play it at 2 because it's like 2 does get a little situational, so I think 1 is the best number. But I do have a second one in my side deck, though. But when this card is destroyed by battle or card effect by my opponent, you can add 1 vampire monster from your deck to your hand or 1 vampire spell or trap. So he does the effect of both retainer and familiar, but of course your opponent has to destroy it in order to pull that off. But his graveyard effect is pretty good though. Like you can banish this card from the grave, and whenever you normal summon 1 dark vampire monster, you don't have to tribute anything. So that's the only real benefit you need from this guy. All right. Moving on. Now, as I mentioned, I decided to take off the Tristan and Isolde engine entirely. I've retried the Froone and Unizombie engine, which I like it, but it's just like it's easily disrupted as well. So that's why I'm like, yeah, yeah, you do need like plenty of pluses, but at the same time, like if someone decides to like get you by like I don't know, like called by the grave or something, like if you need to resolve a graveyard effect, then you're pretty much done. So like that really does become an issue, but there are ways to get around with that. So that's why I decided to take them out and decided to go with these. I played 2 Gozikis. Really good because he's also a Foolish Burial-like card. You can send 1 zombie to the grave once per turn. And also if this card leaves the field, you can banish 1 zombie and special summon 1 zombie from your hand. And of course we also have 2 Mizuki. I would play him at 3, but I thought 2 and 2 was actually a little bit better because I was actually able to get a lot more done. I was up against a friend who was playing Cyber Dragons because he's really excited for the new support. But he was actually pretty impressed, like how many vampire monsters I was able to get compared to one of our other friends, because he plays vampires too, but with the Froone and Unizombie engine. And yeah, I was just able to get more of my strongest monsters out faster this way than his way. I actually also tested this out against Spirals, and it held its own really well, so I'm like really impressed. And yeah, it just worked out a lot better than I anticipated it would. All right, moving on to we have 4 hand traps. Honestly, I think these are the best hand traps to play for vampires, but it's Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. I'd definitely be picking these up soon because like they're starting to become more meta relevant than ever, and especially against Sky Strikers, because Sky Strikers, someone actually topped with Sky Strikers at my locals on Saturday, so definitely be picking these up. And they're starting to go up in price, so I'd definitely hurry. Now this one really went up in price fast, so I'd definitely be picking these up pretty soon, but it's also, in my opinion, the absolute best hand trap ever. Drone Lockbird, because a lot of decks are very search reliant, like Spirals, Gokis, even Sky Striker Ace, and I do mean Sky Striker Ace, are very search reliant. But yeah, like they will not be able to add any more cards from their deck to the hand for the duration of the turn after they add 1 card from their deck to their hand already. So that's why it's like really good to play and just like slow down a lot of decks. So yeah, Ghost Reaper, like, because you're gonna have plenty of room in your extra deck. With Ghost Reaper, so you're gonna have, kind of like my dinosaurs, as I mentioned, like, you know, you can fit in some other cards that are gonna cause a problem. So yeah, definitely play Ghost Reaper. All right, so now we're moving on to the spells and traps. We got Triple Desire. As I mentioned, this card is basically your Foolish Burial. It's also a Monster Reborn base card, but we never use the second effect. But the first effect is really good because you're basically level modulating at the same time. But you target 1 monster you control, send 1 vampire monster of a different level, and that monster to the graveyard, by the way, and that monster that you target becomes that level for the duration of the turn. Moving on, we got Triple Domain. Like some people play it at 2, some people play it at 3. I like to play it at 3, and sometimes I will bump it down to 2 whenever I side in certain cards, which I'll get to in just a moment. But this card gives you an additional normal summon towards a vampire monster as long as you pay 500 life points. And what's great about this card is that even if this card leaves the field after you pay your cost, you're still going to be able to resolve the extra normal summon. So Ghost Ogre-ing this is going to be, you got to Ghost Ogre right away when it's first activated. You don't do it when your opponent already pays the cost, you know? So anyway, and also whenever a vampire monster does battle damage, you get to regain those life points. So since this deck makes you pay life points a lot, Konami was smart to make a card like this so that way you can regain your life points and still be able to like play the game competitively. Alright, next up we got Triple Lure Darkness, because you need to get some search power. Or not search power, but draw power. And it's really good because, like, even if this Ash, you know, you don't have to worry about losing your entire hand because the cost comes after. So like honestly, like ashing this card is kind of pointless sometimes. But unless it's the only card in your hand, then yeah, you definitely want to ash it. But it's a great card. I like it, and the fact that almost every monster except except the Joel and Lockbird and Gozuki and Mizuki, everything's going to be dark, so you'll have something to pitch when using Allure of Darkness. Alright, next up we got 1 for 1. Mainly because you want to get Retainer out, because you need to search out your boss monsters as quickly as you can. Book of Life. I only play it at 1 just because 2 just gets bricky, and even at 3 it's like way too bricky, so 1 is the best number. And of course, Monster Reborn. Because like, Book of Life, if you go first and you open up with it, you know, that's going to be a bit of a problem, but if you can manage to like force your opponent to send a monster to the graveyard, like I usually use Pilgrim Reaper or Vampire Duke for that purpose, then, you know, play your Book of Life, special summon 1 zombie from your grave, and then banish 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard. So that's why you still want to play at least just 1 Book of Life. And of course, Monster Reborn's good in any deck. Alright, and finally, for the last things, which is our traps, we have Vampire Awakening. Lets you special summon a vampire from the deck, but you have to destroy it during the end phase of the turn that this card is activated, and it's once per turn only. And of course, we have their counter trap, Vampire Domination. This card's amazing. It's kind of like Solemn Strike and Judgment at the same time, but only it doesn't negate summons, but it can negate any monster, spell, or trap card effect as long as you control a vampire monster. And if you destroyed a monster using this card's effect, you can gain life points equal to that monster's original attack strength. So it's really great. And the fact that it's a counter trap, it makes it really hard to negate. So like cards like Infinite Impermanence can't really stop it, even if it's in the same column. They'll just have to let it go. Alright, so moving on to the extra deck, we have 2 Vampire Suckers. This card acts as both as Monarch Stormforth and Zombie World, but of course it doesn't affect every monster on the field. But what she does is like she has 2 different effects. The first effect is that you target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon it to his side of the field, and it becomes, of course it's in defense mode by the way, and it becomes a zombie. And of course, since whenever a zombie is special summoned from either player's graveyard, you can draw 1 card. And of course that's once per turn. But its primary effect is that whenever you're going to tribute summon for a zombie type monster, you can tribute one of your opponent's zombie type monsters instead, even though you don't control it. So like the monster you revive can instantly become yours to tribute, so that's why it's so good. And I'm really happy that this came out in Flames of Destruction. And this card went up fast too. Like it was like 15 at the start, but then instantly dropped to like $3 in like 2 or 3 days, and then it just went back up to $8. So I'll definitely be picking these up as quickly as I can. We got Decode Talker. Of course, every extra deck should run a Decode Talker at least, since it's like literally the most standard Link monster. Proxy Dragon. Nightmare Phoenix, which pops spells and traps, and if it's co-linked, you get to draw 1 card. And Nightmare Cerberus, which pops monsters, and like Phoenix, if it's co-linked, you get to draw 1 card. So like I think these are like a small Nightmare engine's pretty decent. It really gets a lot done too. For the Xyz monsters, we got 2 Gaia Dragons, which of course it is rank 7. We don't really run any level 7s in this deck, but the way you bring it out is like you can literally use any rank 5 or 6 just to summon it. So like as long as you like use up which I'll get to in just a moment, like what cards I usually like to use to bring it out. But of course I might bump them down to 1 eventually once I get my hands on a on another double helix. But we have moving on, we have Pilgrim Reaper. Once per turn you can detach 1 Xyz material and mill the top 5 cards of your deck. Of course your opponent has to do that too, which is really good, especially if you opened it with Book of Life, which again you don't really want to, but if you did try to get this guy out, that way you at least get a monster out in your opponent's graveyard, that way you can banish it to resolve the effect. And then we got Crimsonite Vampire Brown. These 2, by the way, are the ones I usually use for material towards Gaia Dragon, because Crimson Knight has a pretty good ability, but his secondary effect where he comes back at the start of your next standby phase if he was destroyed by battle or by card effect. So anyway, Vampire Crimson Knight has a similar effect as Shadow Vampire since he is the upgraded form, but you detach 1 Xyz material, target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard, and special summon it to your side of the field, but only that monster is allowed to attack for the duration of the turn. So he has the same restriction. But as I just mentioned, if he was sent to the graveyard by battle or card effect, on the next standby phase, you can special summon this card back from from the grave to your side of the field, but it has to be in defense mode, which kind of sucks because you think with a shield like that, he'd have some good defense points. But after that, once he's summoned back, I instantly just go into another Gaia. That way I can, like... Because Gaia's good is because when he attacks a monster in defense mode, he does piercing damage. So that's the only reason why I run it. And you'll be running, like, plenty of rank 5 and 6s. So that's why I was like, okay, so why not? He's a free summon as long as I have something I'm willing to pitch with it. Next up, we got Dragulus. Great card as well. I would run him at 2, but I think 1's fine just because, like, he brings himself back quite a bit. But, once per turn during either player's turn, you can detach 1 Xyz material, and you can essentially book a monster your opponent controls that was summoned from the extra deck. And also, if this card is sent to the graveyard or banished, you can special summon him back from your back to the field in face down defense. And if this card gets flipped face up, you can send 1 card on the field to the graveyard. So his revival effect is not at all once per turn. It's just each time he's sent to the graveyard or banished. But if he's sent to the graveyard, just be on the lookout of those Called by the Graves, because someone actually pulled that off on me. I was like, crap, I can't bring him back anymore. So I'm like, because he completely negated its effect. So I was like, well, that was a bust. And finally, we have Vampire Sheridan. I'm still not sure if I'm pronouncing that last word right, but Dampier is really good because he gets a lot done as well. But once per turn, you get to detach 1 material and target one card on the field and send it to the graveyard. So this is not destroy, so it's a good way to avoid like destruction effects, because someone was running like artifact sights on me and I knew he had one of them face down, so as soon as I send it, he couldn't trigger it off his effect. And he does the same thing as Scourge and Froone in terms of the end of the battle phase, but you have to detach 1 material to use that effect. So like whenever he destroys a monster in battle, you can revive it to your side of the field by detaching 1 Xyz material. But overall, like, the fact that you can just send a card to the graveyard, it's really great. So that's why I personally like to run him, and he's actually one of my favorite Xyz monsters now. But yeah. And of course, for Ghost Reaper targets, we have totally awesome, because I'm still seeing plenty of Paleozoic Frog players and Dinosaur players. You know, you don't want them to negate your summon, so I have Lagia. And I'm going to make room for, like, Spiral Double Helix, Isolde. I'm not talking about that monster I was running last time. I'm talking about the Link monster, the Noble Knights monster, because Gokis are incorporating that a lot. If for Sky Striker Ace, like, the best one to Ghost Reaper is going to be that red one, which is Kagari. Which I forgot to mention, by the way, in order to use Ghost Reaper's effect, your opponent has to control more monsters than you do. But if you're going second, like, the second he summons a monster, instantly discard that Ghost Reaper. That way you can target one of his whatever monsters that he might have, and you pretty much just banish every copy of it. So that's why Ghost Reaper is, like, in my opinion, one of the better hand traps to play for this deck specifically, because you're going to have plenty of room in your extra deck to make room with. Anyway, now going on to the side deck. We have, it's not yet completed, but there's still room for, like, other monsters I can put in. But we have Vampire's Curse. This guy's pretty good in his own right. The fact that he's level 6, but when he's destroyed by battle, you can and sent to the graveyard, you can pay 500 life points and special summon him during the next standby phase, and he gains 500 attack points. We have Vampire Grace, which she special summons herself whenever you special summon a zombie monster using a zombie monster's effect. You pay 2,000 life points and you can revive her from your graveyard. And once per turn, you can declare a card type, monster, spell, or trap, and your opponent will have to send a card of that type that you declared. We have Vampire Vamp, which is the only level 7 vampire monster. But she's basically relinquished. Whenever she is normal summoned or any other vampire monster is normal summoned, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls and equip that monster to her, and she gains that monster's attack strength. And also, if this card gets sent to the graveyard while equipped, you get to bring her back from the grave. Of course, as I mentioned, we do have a second sorcerer just in case, but generally I still like to keep it at just 1 in my main deck. But a second one never hurts sometimes, so like, it's just a maybe. Next up, we got 1 Vampire Lord, because of course, you know, it's a classic, why not? But the only reason I am running it in the sides, because like sometimes I have to throw this guy in because he's a 3k beatstick, but Vampire Genesis, which requires Vampire Lord to be banished from the field in order to summon. But yeah, like, I just use him because he's just power. Now, I found that this card was really good in Vampires. Like, I thought it was going to hurt me, like, a lot, but as long as you can set up your board and when your opponent goes second, this really will slow him down quite a bit. But it's anti-spell fragrance. This is super good against Sky Strikers as well, because it's a very spell heavy deck. So like I was like, oh wow, like anti-spell fragrance would really slow him down, and that just like really puts him, that just makes him vulnerable quite a lot. So but yeah, anti-spell fragrance, definitely a great card, because like both players must set spells before activating them, and they can't activate them on the same turn. So I definitely recommend anti-spell fragrance. Don't worry, it's like I said, since Vampires isn't going first deck anyway, as long as you can set up your board, and if you happen to open up with this, set it, and then just activate it at the start of your opponent's standby phase. So like that way, it really will slow them down, especially on a deck that relies on nothing but spells. So this really, really will help you. Anyway, that's all I got for you today, and hopefully this video turned out better than the last one, so I'll catch you on the next one.